Welcome to the channel. I know many of you listen to these videos to relax or fall asleep, and I'm really glad you're here. Before we start today's crime stories, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. And if there's any crime story you'd like me to narrate for you, feel free to request it in the comment section. Now let's begin. Story 1. Renee Nicole Macklin was born on April 2nd, 1988, in Colorado Springs, Colorado. She was the middle child of 5 in a working-class family. Her father worked as a mechanic, and her mother was a part-time library assistant. The family lived in a small, rented house in a quiet neighborhood. From a very young age, Renee was different from her more outgoing siblings. She preferred spending time alone, reading books borrowed from the library where her mother worked. She would often sit for hours writing in notebooks, filling them with short stories and simple poems about nature and her observations of the neighborhood. Her school years were uneventful. She was a good student, especially in English and literature classes, but she was not popular. She had a few close friends who shared her interest in books and writing. Teachers noted she was thoughtful and kind but very quiet. She avoided school sports and large group activities. After high school, she wanted to study writing. Her parents encouraged her to choose a more practical path, but Renee was determined. She worked part-time jobs to save money and took out student loans to attend Old Dominion University in Virginia, where she majored in English. University life was challenging for Renee. She was far from home and found the campus large and intimidating. She spent most of her time in the library or her dorm room, focusing on her studies. It was there she met her first husband, a fellow student named David, in her second year. They bonded over a shared love for poetry. They married in 2009, just after graduation. After college, they moved to Kansas City, Missouri, where David had found a job. Renee worked at a local bookstore and continued writing, but she struggled to get her work published. The couple had 2 children, a boy and a girl. During this time, Renee's writing often reflected a sense of quiet frustration and loneliness, even though she loved her children deeply. Her first marriage ended in 2016. The divorce was difficult and left Renee as a single mother of 2 young children. She felt overwhelmed. To support her family, she took a job doing administrative work for a small nonprofit organization. The job was not fulfilling, but it paid the bills. A few years later, she met her second husband, Michael Good, through a mutual friend. Michael was a kind, soft-spoken man who worked as a graphic designer. They married in 2019, and they had a child together, a son. For a while, life seemed stable and happy. Renee began writing more frequently again, sharing her poetry online in small writing groups. This period of stability ended tragically in 2023 when Michael Good died suddenly from an undiagnosed heart condition. He was 36 years old. Renee was devastated. She was now a widow with 3 children to care for alone. The grief was profound and changed her. She became more withdrawn from her wider social circle, focusing solely on her children and her writing. Her poetry from this period became darker, exploring themes of loss and protection. Following the political climate of the time and seeking a fresh start, she made a big decision. In late 2024, she moved with her new partner, Becca, and all 3 children to Canada, where Becca had family. Life in Canada was peaceful but isolating. Renee missed her own family in the United States. After over a year, she and Becca decided to return and settled in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in 2025. They chose a modest house on a tree-lined street in the central neighborhood. Renee hoped the city's active arts community might offer new opportunities for her writing. She spent her days taking care of her youngest child, who was now 6, managing the home and writing. She and Becca lived a quiet, private life. Renee's habits were routine. She took her son to school, went grocery shopping, and walked the family dog. She kept a detailed journal, noting everyday events and her thoughts. She was not politically active and had no history of protests or activism. Her main concerns were her family's safety and finding a small publisher for her collection of poems. On the morning of January 7th, 2026, Renee Good followed her normal routine. The weather was cold, and the streets of Minneapolis had leftover snow from a previous storm. After breakfast, she drove her maroon Honda Pilot SUV to drop her 6-year-old son off at his elementary school, a short distance from their home. Her wife, Becca, was in the passenger seat. After the drop-off, they began the drive back to their house. They were traveling south on Portland Avenue, a one-way street just a few blocks from home. At approximately 9:35 a.m., Renee was driving slowly. Ahead, she saw a large, dark SUV stuck in a snowbank near the intersection of Portland Avenue and East 33rd Street. This vehicle was an unmarked federal SUV belonging to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. As she approached, Renee brought her own SUV to a stop. She did not park at the curb. Instead, she stopped her vehicle sideways in the street, partly blocking the lane, facing the driver's side of the stuck ICE vehicle. She later told her wife she wanted to see if the people in the stuck SUV needed help. The driver of the ICE vehicle was Agent Jonathan Ross. He and other agents were in the neighborhood as part of a large immigration operation. After getting his vehicle stuck, Ross had called for backup. When he saw Renee's SUV stop sideways near him, he decided to investigate. He pulled his own SUV out of the snowbank, drove around the front of Renee's vehicle, and parked ahead of her, blocking her path forward. He then stepped out of his vehicle. He was wearing casual clothing and had a black ski mask covering his face. In his left hand, he held his personal cell phone, which he used to start recording a video. Ross walked toward the front of Renee's Honda. Renee, uncertain of his intentions, put her car in reverse and backed up slightly to keep distance. Ross then walked around the driver's side of her SUV, recording her face and her license plate through the window. Inside the car, Renee said to him, "That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you." Becca got out of the passenger side and stood behind their SUV, using her own phone to record Ross. She said to him, "Show your face, big boy. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. This will be the same plate when you come talk to us later." "That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking veteran." Renee then waved her hand out of the driver's window, motioning to a Ford Explorer that had entered the street to go around her. This car, and another behind it, drove past her SUV. During this time, Ross had walked back to the passenger side of Renee's vehicle. Then a second ICE vehicle, a Nissan Titan pickup truck, pulled up and stopped on the left side of Renee's SUV. 2 more ICE agents got out. The situation on the street now involved 3 armed ICE agents surrounding Renee's car. The agents began shouting commands. One of the agents from the Nissan pickup walked directly to Renee's driver's side door. He repeatedly yelled at her to get out of the fucking car. Renee did not get out. She kept her hands on the steering wheel. She put the transmission of her Honda into reverse again. The agent at her door then placed his hands on her door handle and the frame of her open window. At the same moment, Becca tried to open the front passenger door to get back in. Renee backed the SUV up a few more feet. While this was happening, Agent Ross walked from the passenger side to the front left corner of Renee's Honda. He still held his phone in his left hand. The agent at the driver's window now reached his arm through the open window into the car. Becca, seeing this, shouted to Renee, "Drive, baby, drive!" Renee shifted the car from reverse to drive. She pressed the accelerator. The SUV moved forward. The steering wheel was turned to the right, which was the correct direction to drive down the one-way street. This meant the vehicle was moving away from Agent Ross, who was standing at the front left corner. As the SUV began to move, Ross transferred his cell phone to his left hand entirely. With his right hand, he drew his service pistol from its holster. He leaned forward toward the moving vehicle and fired 3 shots in rapid succession, all within 1 second. The first bullet struck the windshield of the Honda. The second and third bullets were fired as the vehicle passed him, with the third shot going through the driver's side window. All 3 shots hit Renee Good. 1 bullet struck her in the head, killing her instantly. The SUV, now without a conscious driver, continued rolling forward down Portland Avenue. It traveled for a short distance before hitting a parked car and a light pole, where it came to a stop. After the shooting, Ross lowered his gun and walked back toward the other agents. A male voice on his recording was heard saying, "Fucking bitch." Ross told another agent to call 911. He remained at the scene for over a minute. Becca Good, who was not in the vehicle when it crashed, was seen by a neighbor sitting on the curb, covered in blood, crying, "You guys just killed my wife." A neighbor who was a medical doctor approached the crashed SUV to try to help. ICE agents blocked his path. The doctor said, "Can I check a pulse?" An agent replied, "No, back up now." The doctor said, "I'm a physician." The agent responded, "I don't care." Another agent said emergency medical services were on the way. Several agents, including Ross, then got into their vehicles and left the area before local police or ambulances arrived. Minneapolis Fire Department and emergency medical services arrived 6 minutes after the shooting. They removed Renee Good from the vehicle and began CPR on the street at 9:45 a.m. She was transported to Hennepin County Medical Center, but was pronounced dead. The entire incident, from the moment Ross first stepped out of his vehicle to the final gunshot, lasted 38 seconds. The crime was discovered instantly because it happened in full view on a city street. Multiple bystanders saw the shooting and recorded videos on their phones. Becca Good, Renee's wife, was a direct witness. Within hours, these videos were shared online and with news organizations. The public saw the footage of Agent Ross firing into the moving SUV. This visual evidence quickly spread across the country. The local investigation began immediately. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, BCA, a state police agency, arrived at the scene. They started to collect evidence, document the scene, and interview witnesses. However, the next day, on January 8th, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, used its federal authority to take over the case. The FBI removed the BCA from the investigation and took control of all evidence, including the crashed car, bullet casings, and any official videos. This meant the only investigation into the shooting would be conducted by federal agencies, the same government that employed Jonathan Ross. With the FBI in charge, the U.S. Department of Justice, DOJ, made key decisions. On January 12th, officials announced that the DOJ's Civil Rights Division would not open an investigation into whether Ross violated Renee Good's rights. The Deputy Attorney General stated there was no basis for a criminal civil rights investigation. This decision caused several career lawyers within the Civil Rights Division to resign their jobs in protest. On January 13th, the lead federal prosecutor for Minnesota and at least 5 other federal prosecutors in the state also resigned. They disagreed with the DOJ's focus, which included investigating Renee Good's possible ties to activist groups instead of focusing on Ross's actions. Without a federal criminal case, the possibility for justice shifted to local officials. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison and Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty asked the public to send them any videos, photos, or eyewitness accounts. They needed this information to see if they could build a state-level case without the evidence the FBI had taken. As of mid-January 2026, no criminal charges had been filed against Jonathan Ross by any authority. He was placed on administrative leave from ICE, but was not arrested. In the days after the shooting, Renee Good's family hired a prominent civil rights law firm. They announced their intention to seek justice through other means, likely a future wrongful death lawsuit. An online fundraiser for the family gathered over $1.5 million to support Renee's children. Public reaction was intense. Thousands of people protested in Minneapolis and in cities across the United States, demanding accountability and the removal of ICE from their communities. In response, Minneapolis public schools canceled classes and offered remote learning, citing safety concerns after ICE agents had used pepper spray near a high school. On January 12th, Minnesota's Attorney General and the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul filed a lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. The lawsuit sought to stop the federal government from sending ICE agents to conduct operations in Minnesota. The story, based on the information provided, ends with the shooting under a federal investigation that declined to prosecute the agent, local officials seeking alternative paths, the family preparing for a legal battle, and the incident causing significant political and social unrest. The final legal outcome for Jonathan Ross remained unknown. Story 2. Terry Nichols was born in Lapeer, Michigan. He was the third child in his family. His parents, Joyce and Robert Nichols, owned a farm. Terry grew up on this farm. His childhood involved doing many chores. He helped his parents with the animals and the crops. He learned how to operate tractors and other machinery. He also showed a gentle side by often caring for injured wild birds and animals he found on the property. He attended Lapeer High School. People who knew him then described him as a very shy person. In school, he joined some sports teams and clubs. He took classes in subjects like crafts and business law. He was a good student and finished high school with strong grades. His dream at that time was to go to college and become a doctor. Terry enrolled at Central Michigan University after high school. He only completed one term of classes before leaving. During this time, his brother was badly hurt in a farm accident. Terry offered to donate his own skin to help his brother's surgery. He tried working on the family farm with another brother, but they argued often. Terry felt his brother was too controlling. He decided to leave Michigan for a while. He moved to Colorado. There, he studied and got a license to sell real estate. Not long after he started this new career, his mother asked him to come back home to help on the farm. He returned to Michigan. In 1980, he met a woman named Lana Walsh. She was a real estate agent and had 2 children from a previous marriage. Terry and Lana got married. They had a son together in 1982. During his marriage to Lana, Terry did not have a steady career. He worked many different short-term jobs. He did carpentry, managed a grain elevator, and tried selling insurance and real estate. His wife was the main breadwinner. Terry spent most of his time at home taking care of the house and the children. He cooked meals and worked in the garden. In 1988, when he was 33 years old, Terry decided to join the United States Army. He wanted to get away from farm life. During basic training, he was older than the other soldiers and found the physical training difficult. It was in the Army that he first met Timothy McVeigh. They became close friends quickly. They discovered they shared similar interests in guns and similar views about the government. They were later stationed together at Fort Riley in Kansas. There, they also met a soldier named Michael Fortier. Soon after Terry joined the Army, his wife Lana asked for a divorce. There was a problem about who would care for their young son. Because of this, Terry requested an early discharge from the Army. His request was granted in 1989, so he could return to Michigan to be a father to his son. In 1990, Terry married for a second time. He married a woman named Marif Torres. He met her through a mail-order bride service. She was only 17 years old, and he was 35. Marif moved from the Philippines to live with him in Michigan. When she arrived, she was already pregnant. The child was not Terry's. That child died in a tragic accident at age 2. Terry and Marif later had 2 children together. Over the years, they visited the Philippines many times. Terry's views about the government began to change. He lived in an area where many people were angry at the government, especially after banks took many farms in the 1980s. He started going to meetings of anti-government groups. His beliefs became more extreme. He began to follow ideas called sovereign citizen ideology. This means he believed he was not under the authority of the U.S. government. In 1992, he wrote a letter to a local county clerk. In the letter, he tried to renounce his U.S. citizenship. He called the political system corrupt. He called himself a non-resident alien. Later, he went to court because he owed money on credit cards. He yelled at the judge, saying the government had no power over him. He also refused to renew his driver's license. After Timothy McVeigh left the army, he and Terry grew closer. In late 1991, Terry invited McVeigh to live with him in Michigan. They started a small business together, selling military surplus items at gun shows. For the next few years, McVeigh lived with Terry off and on. In April of 1993, they were together at the Nichols farmhouse watching news about a government raid in Waco, Texas. The event made them very angry. Terry moved to Kansas in early 1994 and got a job as a ranch hand. He wrote a letter to his new employer and to local officials, stating that he was not subject to U.S. laws or taxes. He was a hard worker, but his employer noted his unusual political opinions. In the fall of 1994, Terry quit this job. He told his boss he was going into business with his friend, Timothy McVeigh. In September 1994, Terry Nichols and Timothy McVeigh rented a storage shed in Harrington, Kansas. This shed was used to store materials. Their plan was to build a very large bomb. They wanted to use this bomb to attack the federal government. This was because they were angry about the government's actions at Waco, Texas, in 1993. The first step was to get explosives. In late September or early October of 1994, Nichols and McVeigh went to a quarry near Marion, Kansas. They broke in and stole dynamite and blasting caps. Blasting caps are small devices used to set off larger explosions. They took these items back to their storage shed. The next step was to buy the main ingredient for the bomb. This ingredient was ammonium nitrate fertilizer. Ammonium nitrate is a common farm fertilizer, but it can become explosive when mixed with fuel. Nichols began purchasing this fertilizer in large bags from farm supply stores. He used fake names when he made these purchases. He stored the bags of fertilizer in several different rental storage units he controlled. This was to avoid drawing attention from buying too much in one place. They needed money to pay for all these materials. In November 1994, Nichols and McVeigh drove to Arkansas. They visited a gun collector named Roger Moore. Moore was a man they knew from gun shows. They tied him up, robbed his home, and stole many guns, coins, and precious metals. They later sold these stolen items to get cash. This cash was used to fund their bomb plot. In February 1995, Nichols bought a small house in Harrington, Kansas. He paid for it with cash. This house became a base for their activities. In March 1995, Nichols bought containers of diesel fuel. Diesel fuel was the second ingredient needed to mix with the ammonium nitrate fertilizer to make the bomb explosive. The plan was to build the bomb inside a rented truck. The truck would then be parked next to their target, the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. They chose this building because it housed many federal government offices. On April 16, 1995, which was Easter Sunday, Nichols and McVeigh drove from Kansas to Oklahoma City. They brought a second car with them. This car was a getaway car for McVeigh to use after the bombing. They left this car parked on a street in Oklahoma City. On April 18th, the day before the bombing, Nichols and McVeigh worked on building the bomb. They did this at a public lake area near Harrington, Kansas. They used the rented Ryder truck. They moved the bags of ammonium nitrate fertilizer and the barrels of diesel fuel into the back of the truck. They mixed the materials together inside the truck. They also added the stolen explosives from the quarry to make the bomb more powerful. Nichols helped McVeigh with this work. When they were finished, the bomb was ready. Early in the morning of April 19, 1995, Timothy McVeigh alone drove the bomb truck from Kansas to Oklahoma City. Terry Nichols did not go with him. Nichols returned to his home in Harrington to be with his wife and child. At 9:02 a.m., McVeigh parked the rented truck in front of the Murrah Federal Building. He lit the fuses for the bomb. He then locked the truck and walked to his getaway car. He drove away. A short time later, the bomb exploded. The explosion destroyed the front of the 9-story building. It caused massive damage. Offices collapsed. Cars were crushed. The explosion killed 168 people. Among the dead were 19 children who were in a daycare center inside the building. Hundreds more people were injured. Many were trapped in the rubble. Terry Nichols was at his home in Kansas when the bomb exploded. He learned about the bombing from the news on television. On April 21st, 2 days after the bombing, he saw on the news that the police wanted to talk to him. He drove himself to the police station in Harrington and turned himself in. He told the police he was there for questioning. He agreed to let the police search his house. The police searched his home in Harrington. Inside, they found several important items. They found blasting caps. They found pieces of detonating cord. They found a bag of ammonium nitrate fertilizer. They found empty plastic barrels that were the same type as fragments found at the bomb site in Oklahoma City. They also found a receipt for fertilizer with Timothy McVeigh's fingerprints on it. They found many guns and books about weapons and anti-government ideas. The items found during the search of Terry Nichols' house were given to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. The FBI was the main agency investigating the bombing. The evidence connected Nichols to the bomb materials. The receipt for fertilizer with McVeigh's fingerprints directly linked both men to the purchase of a major bomb ingredient. Because of this evidence, Nichols was formally charged with the crime on May 10, 1995. He was no longer just a witness, he was a suspect. Timothy McVeigh had been arrested just 90 minutes after the explosion. He was stopped by an Oklahoma State trooper for driving a car with no license plate. When the trooper approached the car, he saw McVeigh had a gun. McVeigh was arrested for having that illegal weapon. While he was in jail on that small charge, the police realized he matched the description of the man who rented the Ryder truck used in the bombing. His fingerprints were then matched to the receipt found in Nichols' house. The main witness against both men was their old friend, Michael Fortier. Fortier knew all about the bomb plot. He made a deal with the government. He agreed to tell the court everything he knew. In return, he would not be charged with murder. He was only charged with not telling the police about the crime beforehand and with other minor crimes. Fortier testified that Nichols and McVeigh had talked about bombing a federal building for years. He said he drove with McVeigh to Oklahoma City beforehand to look at the Murrah building. He also testified that Nichols helped rob the gun dealer in Arkansas to get money for the bomb. Terry Nichols' federal trial began after McVeigh's trial. McVeigh was found guilty and sentenced to death. At Nichols' trial, the prosecution showed all the physical evidence from his house. They showed how he bought the fertilizer and helped with the robbery. Nichols' own wife, Marif, was called as a witness by his defense lawyers. However, her answers often hurt his case. She told the court that Nichols used fake names and rented storage lockers without telling her. She said he had lied to her about no longer seeing McVeigh. She could not say where he was on April 18th, the day the bomb was built. The jury in the federal trial found Nichols guilty of conspiring to use a weapon of mass destruction. This means they agreed he helped plan the bomb. However, They decided he did not directly help with the bombing on the final day. They found him not guilty of murder. Instead, they found him guilty of the involuntary manslaughter of 8 federal law enforcement officers who died. This means they believed he unintentionally caused their deaths through his dangerous actions. The same jury then had to decide if Nichols should get the death penalty. They could not agree. Some jurors thought he should be executed, and others did not. Because the jury was deadlocked, the judge had to decide the sentence. The judge gave Nichols life in prison without the possibility of parole for the conspiracy charge. He also gave him a shorter sentence for the manslaughter charges. Nichols was sent to the highest security federal prison in the United States, in Florence, Colorado. Many people in Oklahoma were upset that Nichols did not receive the death penalty for the murder of all 168 victims. Only the 8 federal officers were part of the federal case. The state of Oklahoma decided to put Nichols on trial again. This time, he was charged with 161 counts of first-degree murder for all the other victims, including the children and the unborn child. The state trial began in 2004. Again, Michael Fortier testified. The prosecution showed all the evidence of Nichols' help in planning and building the bomb. The defense argued that other unknown people helped McVeigh, and that Nichols was just a fall guy. The jury did not believe this. They found Nichols guilty on all 161 murder charges. Next, the jury had to decide if Nichols should get the death penalty in this state trial. They listened to many days of testimony from survivors and from victims' families. They also heard from Nichols' own family, who said he was a good father. After many hours of discussion, the jury could once again not agree unanimously on the death penalty. Under the law, this meant the death penalty was off the table. The state judge then sentenced Nichols. The judge called him a terrorist and the worst mass murderer in American history. He gave Nichols 161 consecutive life sentences in prison. This means each life sentence is served one after the other, ensuring he will never be released. Nichols was then sent back to the federal prison in Colorado to serve his sentences. Timothy McVeigh was executed by lethal injection on June 11, 2001. Michael Fortier served his 12-year prison sentence, was released, and entered the Witness Protection Program. Terry Nichols remains in the federal Supermax prison, where he will stay until he dies. The final sentence that closes the story is, the bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building led to the deaths of 168 people, and the 2 men responsible for the plot both died in prison, one by execution and the other serving a life sentence without end. Story 3. Theodore John Kaczynski was born in Chicago in May 1942. His parents were working-class Polish immigrants. They were not religious. Ted had a younger brother named David, who was born 3 years after him. As a young child, Ted was described as healthy and normal by his teachers. When Ted was about 10 years old, his family moved from the city to the suburb of Evergreen Park. At his new school, tests showed that Ted had a very high IQ. Because he was so smart, the school decided he should skip the 6th grade. This change had a big effect on him. Before skipping a grade, Ted had played with other children his age. After moving up, he was with older children who bullied him. He began to feel like he did not belong. In high school, Ted was an excellent student. He was known for being very smart, but very quiet. He played the trombone and joined clubs for math and science. He skipped another grade and graduated from high school at the age of 15. Because of his high test scores, he was accepted to Harvard University. He began studying at Harvard when he was only 16 years old. People later said he might have been too young emotionally for this move. At Harvard, Ted studied mathematics. He lived in a special dorm for the youngest students. He kept to himself and did not make many friends. While at Harvard, he volunteered for a psychological study. The study was meant to measure how people deal with stress. Students wrote personal essays, and then a stranger aggressively criticized them based on what they wrote. Ted was part of this study for many hours over several months. After graduating from Harvard, Ted went to the University of Michigan to get his master's degree and then his doctorate in mathematics. His professors said he was a brilliant and focused student. He earned very high grades. During his time at Michigan, he briefly considered seeing a psychiatrist about personal feelings but changed his mind. He later wrote that this was an angry and confusing time for him. In 1967, Ted became a professor of mathematics at the University of California, Berkeley. He was the youngest assistant professor the university had ever had. However, he was not happy in this job. Students said he was a poor teacher who seemed uncomfortable and did not like questions. In 1969, he suddenly quit his job without giving a reason. A department chairman wrote that Ted was very shy and had made no friends there. After leaving Berkeley, Ted moved back to his parents' house in Illinois for 2 years. Then, in 1971, he decided to live a very simple life. He used his savings to buy a small piece of land near Lincoln, Montana. He built a one-room cabin by himself. The cabin had no running water, no toilet, and no electricity. He got water from a nearby stream. He learned how to garden, hunt, and forage for food. His goal was to be self-sufficient and independent from modern society. He rode an old bicycle into the small town to use the library or buy a few supplies. People in the area saw him as a quiet man who kept to himself, which was not unusual for that remote area. He read many books about philosophy and the problems of modern technology. He began to feel a deep anger towards industrial society. He saw technology as destroying human freedom and the natural world. He spent a lot of time alone, thinking and writing down his ideas in journals. In the summer of 1983, he went on a long hike to a favorite remote spot and found that a new road had been built through it. He was deeply upset by this. He felt that progress and development were ruining the wilderness he loved. After finding the road built through his wilderness spot, Ted Kaczynski decided to take action against the industrial system he hated. He began to plan and build bombs in his remote cabin. His goal was to kill or injure people involved with modern technology, like university professors and executives. His first bomb was sent in May 1978. He mailed a package to a materials engineering professor at Northwestern University in Illinois. The package was found in a parking lot and returned to the professor's address. The professor was suspicious because he had not sent it. A campus police officer, Terry Marker, opened the package. It exploded and gave him minor cuts and burns. Nearly a year later, in May 1979, Kaczynski left a bomb in a common area at the same university. A graduate student named John Harris found the box and opened it. The bomb exploded and injured him. In November 1979, Kaczynski placed a bomb on an American Airlines flight from Chicago to Washington, D.C. The device started a small fire in the cargo hold, filling the cabin with smoke. The plane made an emergency landing. The bomb did not explode fully, but 12 people suffered from smoke inhalation. In June 1980, Kaczynski mailed a bomb to the home of Percy Wood, the president of United Airlines. Wood opened the package, and the explosion caused severe cuts and burns over his face and body. Kaczynski was very careful. He built his bombs from scrap wood and metal, making them hard to trace. He often took parts from old machines he found. He deliberately left false clues inside the bombs to mislead the police. For example, he sometimes put a small metal plate stamped with the initials FC inside a bomb part. He also used bits of tree bark and twigs in the packages. He always wiped the bombs clean to avoid leaving fingerprints. He continued his attacks over the years. In May 1982, A bomb addressed to a computer science professor at Vanderbilt University exploded when the professor's secretary, Janet Smith, opened it. She suffered severe burns to her hands and body from metal fragments. In July 1982, a bomb injured a professor at the University of California, Berkeley. In May 1985, another bomb at Berkeley injured a graduate student and Air Force captain named John Hauser. The explosion caused him to lose 4 fingers and the sight in one eye. In December 1985, Kaczynski left a bomb in the parking lot of a computer store in Sacramento, California. The store owner, Hugh Scruton, saw the device and picked it up. It exploded and killed him. Kaczynski then stopped for almost 6 years. He later said he was busy writing a long essay about his ideas. He started again in 1993. In June, he mailed a bomb to a geneticist at the University of California, San Francisco. The professor, Charles Epstein, lost several fingers when he opened it. That same week, Kaczynski mailed a bomb to a computer science professor at Yale University, David Gelernter. The explosion severely injured Gelernter, damaging his eye, ear, and right hand. In December 1994, Kaczynski mailed a bomb to the home of an advertising executive named Thomas Mosser in New Jersey. Mosser opened the package and was killed. Kaczynski later sent a letter to a newspaper saying he targeted Mosser because his company helped repair the public image of an oil company after a big oil spill. His final bomb came in April 1995. He mailed a package to the offices of the California Forestry Association, a timber industry group. The package was addressed to the former president, but the new president, Gilbert Brent Murray, opened it. The explosion killed him. During all these years, the police and the FBI did not know who was doing the bombings. They called the unknown suspect the Unabomber because the early targets were universities and airlines. A large task force was formed, but they had very few clues. They knew the bombs were handmade and that the sender was intelligent, but they could not find him. In 1995, Kaczynski sent letters to major newspapers. He said he was the bomber and would stop if a national newspaper published his 35,000-word essay, which he called Industrial Society and Its Future. He threatened to send another bomb if they did not publish it. After much debate, and hoping someone might recognize the writing style, the Washington Post newspaper published the full essay in September 1995. The publication of the Unabomber Manifesto in the Washington Post was done in hopes that a reader would recognize the author's writing style. This strategy worked. David Kaczynski, Ted's younger brother, read the essay after his wife became suspicious. The ideas and the phrasing reminded David of letters his brother had written to the family for years. David searched through old family papers. He found typed and handwritten essays from Ted that expressed very similar thoughts about technology and nature. The language and arguments matched the published manifesto closely. David was faced with a terrible choice. He hired a private investigator to look into Ted's life discreetly and then, through a lawyer, contacted the FBI in early 1996. The FBI compared the manifesto to the writings David provided. Linguistic analysts agreed the same person had almost certainly written both. This new evidence, combined with the known facts about the bombings, like their link to universities and Ted's academic background, gave the FBI probable cause for a search warrant. On April 3, 1996, FBI agents approached the remote cabin in Lincoln, Montana. They arrested Ted Kaczynski without incident. Inside the cabin, they found a massive amount of evidence. They discovered bomb-making materials, wires, pipes, chemicals, and tools. They found a live, fully constructed bomb ready for mailing. They also found detailed journals, where Kaczynski had written about every bombing, calling them experiments, and recording his methods. Perhaps most importantly, they found the original typed manuscript of the Industrial Society and Its Future manifesto and the manual typewriter he had used to write it. Kaczynski was charged with multiple federal crimes, including transporting and mailing explosives with intent to kill. Because his bombings had resulted in deaths, the government sought the death penalty. His defense lawyers wanted to argue he was mentally ill to try to save his life, but Kaczynski refused. He did not want to be labeled insane. He wanted his political ideas to be taken seriously. To avoid a trial where the death penalty was possible, a plea agreement was reached. On January 22, 1998, Theodore Kaczynski pleaded guilty to all charges. In exchange, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was sent to the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado, a facility for the most dangerous inmates. The court also ordered Kaczynski to pay restitution to his victims. To help fulfill this, many of his personal belongings, including his journals and writings, with victims' names removed, were sold at auction. The cabin where he built the bombs was taken by the government and later put on display in a museum. Kaczynski remained in prison for the rest of his life. In 2021, he was diagnosed with cancer. His health declined, and on June 10, 2023, he was found unresponsive in his prison cell. He was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. The official cause of death was suicide. For the victims and their families, the legal closure did not erase their loss or suffering. Many continued to deal with physical pain, emotional trauma, and the lasting impact of the attacks. The case remains a stark example of how a personal ideology, taken to a violent extreme, can devastate many lives. Theodore Kaczynski died in prison, bringing an end to the long and painful case of the Unabomber. Story 4. Alexander Bissonnette was born on December 1, 1989, in Quebec City, Canada. He grew up in a residential neighborhood called Cap Rouge. He lived there with his mother, his father, and his twin brother Matthew. From the outside, the family appeared stable. Neighbors described his parents as good people who were present and caring. There were no obvious signs of major trouble in the household during his childhood. Alexander attended local schools. He was described by former classmates as very quiet and introverted. He did not easily make friends and often kept to himself. Some students bullied him because of his quiet nature. This experience of bullying made him withdraw further from social situations. He did not participate in many group activities or team sports. His world became increasingly small, focused on his immediate interests and his computer. After finishing high school, Alexander enrolled at Université Laval, the large university in Quebec City. He chose to study political science. He was not a dedicated student, and his academic progress was slow. He attended classes but did not stand out. During his time at university, he did not join clubs or make new social connections. He continued to live a largely isolated life, often spending time online. To support himself, Alexander got a job. He worked at Héma-Québec, which is the organization that manages blood donations in the province. His job was clerical and administrative. He worked there for several years. His co-workers saw him as a loner. He did not engage in office small talk or socialize with colleagues. He would do his work and then leave. Alexander's social life was almost non-existent. He had no romantic partner that anyone knew about. His main hobbies were visiting a local gun club for target practice and spending extensive time on the internet. His online activities became a major part of his daily routine. He began to frequently visit websites and social media accounts that featured far-right political commentary. He read posts that were strongly anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim. In the months before the crime, Alexander's behavior showed signs of increasing trouble. He had an argument with a co-worker at Héma-Québec. After this incident, he took a leave of absence from his job. A doctor diagnosed him with an anxiety disorder. He was prescribed medication called Paxil. During his time off, his online searching became more obsessive. He spent hours each day reading about mass shootings and the ideologies of violent individuals. He also stopped attending his university classes. Alexander lived in an apartment near the university mosque with his twin brother. His brother was often away. This left Alexander alone for long periods. He did not share his growing political obsessions or his online activities with his family. When he visited his parents for dinner, he presented a calm version of himself. He did not talk about his anger or his fears. His parents knew he was on leave from work and struggling with anxiety, but they did not know the depth of his online world or his fixations. This was the state of Alexander Bissonnette's life in January 2017. He was 27 years old. He was on leave from his job, not attending school, socially isolated, and deeply immersed in online content filled with hate and violence. He felt angry and anxious about the world. On the afternoon of January 29, 2017, Alexander Bissonnette was at his parents' house. He had been on leave from his job for a month. He spent the day on his computer. He read websites about mass shootings and jihadist attacks. He also drank sake, a Japanese alcoholic drink, and became drunk. He watched television news. The news reported that Canada would welcome refugees who were fleeing strict new immigration rules in the United States. This news made him very angry. Bissonnette had been thinking about attacking the local mosque for a long time. The news report made him decide to act that day. At 4:14 p.m., he visited the Facebook page of the Quebec City Islamic Cultural Center. Later, he read a tweet from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that welcomed refugees. He then had dinner with his parents. After dinner, he went to his old bedroom in their house and looked at more websites about violence. At 7 p.m., Bissonnette shut down his computer. He left his parents' house. He was carrying 2 guns. He had a 9mm Glock pistol hidden in his coat pocket. He also had a .223 caliber rifle. He had put the rifle inside a black guitar case to hide it. He told his parents he was going to do some errands and then go to his gun club for target practice. This was a normal activity for him, so they did not suspect anything. Instead of going to the gun club, he drove his parents' Mitsubishi car directly toward the mosque. He arrived near the mosque at 7:37 p.m. He parked and felt nervous. He hesitated and did not get out of the car. He drove to a nearby convenience store. He bought a bottle of vodka-based alcoholic drink. He drank it quickly in his car. He then drove back to the mosque. He later told police he believed someone had seen him with his guns. He thought he would be caught by police eventually, so he decided he must go through with his plan. The evening prayers at the mosque had started at 7:30 p.m. and ended about 15 minutes later. Many people had gone home. Inside the main prayer hall, 46 men remained. Some were praying individually. Others were talking with friends. It was a very cold night, with temperatures far below freezing, so no one was standing outside. Just before 7:54 p.m., Bissonnette walked up the snowy driveway to the mosque's front entrance. He opened the guitar case, took out the rifle, and loaded it. At that moment, 2 brothers, Mamadou Barry and Ibrahima Barry, were putting on their coats in the lobby. They opened the front door to leave. Bissonnette pointed the rifle at them and pulled the trigger, but the gun jammed and did not fire. The 2 brothers were frightened. They slipped on the icy step and fell down. Bissonnette dropped the rifle on the ground. He pretended it was a joke and smiled at them. Then he took the 9mm Glock pistol from his coat. The Barry brothers tried to get up and run. Bissonnette fired shots. He hit Ibrahima Barry in the arm, back, and stomach. Ibrahima fell down. Bissonnette walked closer and shot him in the head. He then shot Mamadou Barry, who was trying to crawl away, in the shoulder and leg. Mamadou collapsed. Bissonnette walked over and shot him in the head as well. 2 other people in the doorway saw this happen. They ran back inside the mosque, down a corridor, and into the large prayer room. They shouted a warning. People in the prayer room heard the gunshots and the shouting. Panic began. Bissonnette entered the building. He walked down the corridor and into the prayer room. He started shooting his pistol at the people inside. He fired all 10 bullets from his first magazine. People screamed and ran. Some men rushed to the front of the room, a curved niche called the mihrab, to hide. Others ran for emergency exits. One man grabbed a little girl and hid with her behind a pillar. Bissonnette stepped back into the lobby to reload his pistol. He put a new magazine of bullets into the gun. This took only a few seconds. At 7:55 p.m., he walked back into the prayer room. He fired another 30 bullets in 30 seconds. He aimed specifically at the men hiding in the mihrab. He shot and killed Khaled Belkacemi, a 60-year-old university professor who was there. He then turned toward a small office near the front. He shot and killed Abdelkrim Hussein, age 41, who was near the office door. A man named Ayman Derbali was crouched on the floor. To try and save others, he moved suddenly to distract the shooter. Bissonnette shot him in the knee and the chin. As Derbali lay on the floor, Bissonnette shot him 6 more times. Derbali was badly wounded, but did not die. Bissonnette then saw Abu Bakr Thabdi, age 44, who was trying to hide. He walked up to him and shot him 3 times in the head at close range. About 20 seconds after this, a 57-year-old man named Azzedine Soufiane rushed at Bissonnette. Soufiane was a grocer and a strong man. He tackled the shooter, pushing him into a shoe rack against the wall. They struggled. Bissonnette managed to push his gun arm free and shot Soufiane twice. Bissonnette retreated to the lobby a second time to reload his pistol again. He returned to the prayer room 4 seconds later. He saw Azzedine Soufiane was still moving on the floor. Bissonnette walked up to him and shot him 1 more time in the head. The shooter then walked to the middle of the room. He looked around. Most of the remaining people were well hidden in the mihrab, protected by its curved walls. He could not get a good shot at them. At 7:56 p.m., just 2 minutes after he first shot the Berry brothers outside, Bissonnette stopped. He turned, walked out the front door, and left his rifle and guitar case on the ground. He got into his car and drove away. Inside the mosque, 6 men were dead. 5 more were seriously injured with bullet wounds. 35 other people were witnesses who had survived by hiding or escaping. Seconds after the shooter left, a university student named Mohammed Belkadir arrived. He had been shoveling snow. He found the 2 Berry brothers outside. He called the police on his phone. He then went inside the mosque and saw the terrible scene. He ran back outside to try to help Mamadou Berry, using his own coat to cover him. When police cars arrived with sirens, officers jumped out with guns drawn. Belkadir was scared and thought the shooter had returned. He ran. The police chased him, caught him, and arrested him because they thought he might be involved. Police and ambulances filled the area. The wounded were taken to different hospitals in the city. The mosque was sealed off as a crime scene. Police found 48 spent bullet casings from the pistol inside. They found the rifle with 1 bullet jammed in it. They began to search for the shooter. After driving away from the mosque, Alexander Bissonnette did not go home. He drove toward the Isle d'Orléans bridge, north of Quebec City. He had 1 bullet left in his pistol. He told police later that he planned to go into the woods and use that bullet to kill himself. But he changed his mind. At 8:10 p.m., he used his cell phone to call 911. He told the operator that he was the person who had shot people at the Quebec City Mosque. He said he wanted to surrender. He told the operator his location. Police cars rushed to the bridge. They found Bissonnette sitting in his car. He surrendered without resistance. The police arrested him and took him to a police station for questioning. At the same time, other police officers were at the mosque. They had arrested Mohammed Belkadir, the student who had tried to help. Early news reports based on some witness accounts, said there might have been two shooters. This was because some people saw Belkadir running from the scene. The police quickly realized this was a mistake. They released Belkadir the next morning after confirming he was a witness and a helper, not a shooter. That night, the police activated a special anti-terrorism protocol. A joint task force involving the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Provincial Police, and Montreal Police took over the investigation. They secured the mosque as a crime scene. Forensic experts collected all the bullet casings and examined the guns left behind. They identified Bissonnette as the only suspect. The investigation relied heavily on evidence. The mosque had 8 security cameras. The police reviewed all the footage. The videos showed the entire attack, from the moment Bissonnette walked up the driveway to when he fled. The footage clearly showed he acted alone. It also showed the actions of the victims, including Azzedine Soufiane tackling the shooter. The judge did not allow the public release of the video, but allowed a detailed description of what it showed to be published. Police searched Bissonnette's apartment and his computer. On his computer, they found his extensive search history. He had visited websites that promoted hatred against Muslims and immigrants. He had read about other mass shooters. His internet history showed he had checked the Twitter account of a conservative commentator 93 times in the month before the attack. All this evidence showed his political motivations. The next day, January 30th, Alexander Bissonnette was formally charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder and 6 counts of attempted murder. He was not charged with terrorism. Legal experts explained that Canadian terrorism laws usually require a connection to a terrorist group, which was not present in this case of a single attacker. The court process began. For over a year, there were many pretrial hearings. During this time, Bissonnette was held in jail. On March 28, 2018, he changed his plea. In court, he pleaded guilty to all 12 charges, 6 murders and 6 attempted murders. By pleading guilty, there was no need for a trial. The next step was a sentencing hearing to decide his punishment. During the sentencing hearing in 2018, the prosecution presented all the evidence, including the security camera descriptions and witness statements. They showed the attack was planned and deliberate. Bissonnette's lawyers argued that he was mentally ill, suffering from anxiety and obsessive disorders. They said he was deeply sorry for his actions. On February 8, 2019, the judge sentenced him to life in prison with no chance of parole for 40 years. This was a very long parole ineligibility period because he had killed multiple people. Bissonnette's lawyers appealed the sentence. They argued that a 40-year period without parole was cruel and unusual punishment. On November 26, 2020, the Quebec Court of Appeal agreed. They reduced his parole ineligibility period to 25 years. The prosecution appealed this decision to the Supreme Court of Canada. In 2022, the Supreme Court made a final ruling. It stated that consecutive parole periods for multiple murders were unconstitutional. This meant Bissonnette's sentence was fixed at life in prison with a chance to apply for parole after 25 years. For the victims and their families, there were other proceedings. The government of Canada recognized the bravery of those inside the mosque. Azzedine Soufiane, who rushed the gunman, was awarded the Star of Courage after his death. For other men, including Ayman Dirbali, who was paralyzed, received medals of bravery. The community held vigils and built a memorial to remember the 6 men who were killed. The shooting also had a lasting impact on first responders. One paramedic who was at the scene that night, Andrienne LeBlanc, died by suicide in March 2018. Her death was linked to the trauma of what she saw. This led to new government funding for mental health support for police, paramedics, and firefighters. Alexander Bissonnette remains in a Canadian prison. He can first ask the parole board for release in 2042, after serving 25 years. The parole board will then decide if he is safe to release into the community. The 6 men who were killed, Ibrahima Berry, Mamadou Tanu Berry, Khaled Belkacemi, Abubakar Thabdi, Abdulkarim Hussain, and Azzedine Soufiane, are remembered by their families and their community as victims of a violent act of hatred. The story of the Quebec City mosque attack is a factual account of a crime that moved from an individual's isolation and rage to violence, and finally through the legal system to a sentence. Story 5. Mohamed Merah was born on October 10, 1988, in Toulouse, France. His parents were French citizens whose families originally came from Algeria. They divorced when he was 5 years old. After the divorce, Merah lived with his mother in the Bellefontaine neighborhood. This area was known for being tough and having social problems. He grew up with his brothers and sisters in a home led by a single mother. As a child, Merah was often described as quiet and a loner. He did not have many friends. He struggled in school and had behavioral problems. From a young age, he showed signs of being violent. These were early red flags, but he was just a child at the time. When he became a teenager, Merah started getting into trouble with the law. His first arrest happened in 2005 when he was 17. The crimes were small, like stealing purses or other petty thefts. In 2007, he was sentenced for a more serious crime, aggravated robbery. Because of this, he served an 18-month prison sentence. He went to prison again in 2009 for other minor offenses, which included driving without a license. Merah's family background was traditionally Muslim, but people who knew him said he never went to the mosque. He was not known to be religious during his youth. However, he had problems with his mental health. In December 2008, he tried to kill himself by hanging. After this, he saw a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist wrote a report. The report said Merah was very focused on his own appearance. He liked designer clothes and grooming his hair. The report also said he was anxious and introverted. It mentioned he had a neurotic fragility because his father left and his mother could not supervise him well. But the report said he was not psychologically disturbed. As a young adult, Merah tried to find a stable job. He worked for a time as a coach builder, which is someone who builds or repairs vehicle bodies. But he often was unemployed. In January 2008, he tried to join the French army. The army rejected him because of his criminal record. In July 2010, he went to a recruitment center for the French Foreign Legion. He stayed there overnight, but left the next morning before anyone could evaluate him. Merah got married, but the marriage did not last. He and his wife separated shortly before the events of 2012. He lived an ordinary social life sometimes. Friends said he could be a nice guy who got along with people. He would sometimes go to nightclubs with friends and drink alcohol. This was unusual for a religious Muslim. A month before the events of 2012, he even went on a skiing trip to Switzerland with friends. However, other parts of his life were different. He traveled to several countries. In late 2009, he and his older brother Abdelkader traveled to Egypt. Merah said he wanted to learn Arabic. French intelligence services took note of this trip. In 2010, he traveled to Pakistan and Afghanistan. He was arrested in Kandahar, Afghanistan, in December 2010. Afghan authorities said he was there as a tourist. French intelligence began to watch him more closely after he returned to France in 2011. In his neighborhood, there was an incident in 2010. A neighbor said Merah forced her young son to watch very violent war videos from Afghanistan. When the boy's mother told him to stop, Merah reportedly beat up the boy's sister. This showed a growing aggression. By early 2012, Merah was 23 years old. He was unemployed, recently separated from his wife, and living in Toulouse. On February 24, 2012, A judge sentenced him to 1 more month in prison for driving without a license. He was due to see the judge again in April. His life appeared unstable, mixing ordinary activities with secret travels and growing anger. In early March 2012, Mohamed Merah began to plan a series of attacks. He had a small apartment in Toulouse. Inside this apartment, he kept several weapons. He had a Colt .45 caliber pistol, a Sten submachine gun, and a shotgun. He also owned a black Yamaha T-Max scooter. He had purchased a GoPro video camera during his ski trip to Switzerland. He planned to use this camera to record his actions. Merah's first target was a soldier. He began watching a French army barracks in Toulouse called the Cassot Barracks. He looked for soldiers who lived off base and would be easier to approach. On Sunday, March 11th, he saw his opportunity. A soldier named Imad Ibn Ziaten had arranged to meet someone to sell a video game console. Merah contacted him, pretending to be the buyer. They agreed to meet in a parking lot in Toulouse. At around 3 p.m., Merah met Imad Ibn Ziaten. Merah was on his black scooter. He spoke with the soldier for a moment. Then, without warning, Merah took out his .45 caliber pistol. He shot the soldier 3 times, once in the head and twice in the body. Imad Ibn Ziaten died at the scene. Merah then drove away on his scooter. He had strapped the GoPro camera to his chest, and it recorded the killing. 4 days later, on Thursday, March 15th, Merah attacked again. This time he went to the city of Montauban, about 50 kilometers from Toulouse. He went to another military location, a cash machine where soldiers often went. He waited on his scooter. At around 2 p.m., 3 soldiers arrived. Their names were Abel Shenif, Mohamed Legwad, and Loic Liber. They were in uniform, but were not on duty. Merah drove his scooter up to them. He said nothing. He took out the same .45 caliber pistol and fired at them from close range. He shot Abel Shenif and Mohamed Legwad. Both soldiers fell to the ground. He shot them again as they lay on the ground. Both soldiers died. The third soldier, Loic Liber, was also shot. He was seriously wounded but survived. During this attack, Merah shouted Allahu Akbar, which means God is great. He then drove away quickly on his scooter. The GoPro camera recorded this attack as well. The French police now knew a serial shooter was targeting soldiers. They found shell casings at both scenes. The bullets were from the same .45 caliber pistol. This linked the 2 shootings. The police started a major investigation. They began looking for a black Yamaha T-Max scooter seen near both crimes. On Monday, March 19th, Merah changed his target. He drove his scooter to the Ojar HaTorah Jewish School in Toulouse. He arrived just before 8 a.m., as students were arriving. He parked his scooter and walked to the school entrance. He was wearing a helmet with the visor down and a long black coat. He carried a bag containing his weapons. Outside the school, he saw a 30-year-old teacher named Jonathan Sandler and his 2 young sons, Arya, aged 5, and Gabriel, aged 4. Merah took out the .45 caliber pistol. He shot Jonathan Sandler first. He then shot the 2 little boys. All 3 died immediately. The noise caused panic. The school's principal, Yaakov Montsenigo, ran outside to see what happened. He saw the bodies and ran back inside to call for help. Merah then entered the school courtyard. He saw a 7-year-old girl named Miriam Montsenigo, the principal's daughter. She was trying to hide behind her father's car. Merah chased her, grabbed her by the hair, and shot her in the head at point-blank range. She also died. Merah then ran back to his scooter. As he was leaving, he dropped his bag. Inside the bag, police would later find the .45 caliber pistol, the Sten submachine gun, extra ammunition, and the GoPro camera. He drove away quickly. The entire attack at the school lasted less than 5 minutes. Merah returned to his apartment. He edited the videos from his GoPro camera. He set the images of the killings to music and to verses from the Quran. He then mailed a memory stick with this video to the Al Jazeera News Network. He wanted them to broadcast it. The police investigation was now very intense. After the school shooting, a witness gave a better description of the scooter. Police reviewed thousands of hours of traffic camera footage from around Toulouse. They were looking for a black Yamaha T-Max scooter that appeared near all 3 crime scenes. They eventually found footage of the scooter driving away from the school neighborhood. They followed its path on camera until they lost its trail in a particular area of the city. This gave them a specific zone to search. Using the traffic camera footage, police identified the specific area where the black scooter had gone. They began a door-to-door search in that neighborhood. On Tuesday, March 20th, the day after the school attack, police officers visited an apartment building at 17 Rue du Sergent Vigna. In the building's garage, they found a black Yamaha T-Max scooter. They checked its license plate and vehicle identification number. They traced the scooter back to its seller. The seller provided the name and identity of the person who bought it, Mohamed Merah. The police then immediately connected this name to the man already under intelligence surveillance for his travels. Police surrounded the apartment building. They confirmed Merah was inside his first-floor apartment. At 3 a.m. on Wednesday, March 21st, a special police unit called Raid attempted to enter the apartment quietly. Merah was waiting with his weapons. He shot at the police through the door, wounding one officer. The police pulled back. They then began a siege, hoping to negotiate his surrender. For over 30 hours, police negotiators talked to Merah by telephone. During these calls, Merah confessed to all the killings. He said his motives were to attack the French army for its role in Afghanistan and to punish Jews. He claimed he was a member of Al-Qaeda. He said he wanted his video to be broadcast. The police tried to calm him and convince him to give up. Throughout the siege, Merah would sometimes fire his gun out of the window at the police. On the morning of Thursday, March 22nd, the negotiations ended. Merah fired hundreds of rounds from his automatic weapons out of the bathroom window. The police decided they had to end the siege. Just after 11 a.m., they launched a final assault. They used explosives to blow open the apartment's front door and windows. Under the cover of smoke and noise, a robot with a camera was sent in. It saw Merah jump from the bathroom window into the interior hallway. He was armed. Police officers then entered the apartment. They saw Merah retreating back into the bathroom. He was still holding his gun. The officers fired several shots. One bullet hit Merah in the head. He fell to the floor. The police secured the apartment. Medics were called in, but Mohamed Merah was dead. After the siege, a large investigation began. Police searched Merah's apartment thoroughly. They found all his weapons, ammunition, and the edited video he had made. They also examined his computer and phone records. The investigation looked to see if he had any helpers. The evidence showed that Merah had acted alone in the actual shootings. However, his older brother, Abdelkader Merah, and a friend, Feta Malki, were arrested. The police believed Abdelkader helped Mohammed with ideas and possibly with stealing the scooter used in the crimes. They believed Feta Malki helped Mohammed get some of his weapons. Both men were put on trial. The trial took place years later, in 2017. Abdelkader Merah was found guilty of being involved in terrorist conspiracy and helping to prepare the crimes. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Feta Malki was found guilty of supplying weapons to a criminal and other charges. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison. The families of the victims received support from the state and the community. A memorial was held for the soldiers and the Jewish school victims. The school itself continued to operate with increased security measures. Mohamed Merah's body was buried in the Muslim section of a cemetery near Toulouse on March 29, 2012. The French government and the victims' families moved forward, remembering those lost to his violence. The direct threat ended with his death during the police siege. Story 6. Luca Traini was born on July 21, 1989, in Tolentino, Italy. This is a small town in the Marche region. He grew up there in an ordinary family. His father worked in a factory. His mother took care of the home. He attended local schools. He was an average student. He did not stand out for being especially good or bad in his studies. After finishing school, Traini found work in a local factory. He worked there for several years. The work was simple and repetitive. He did not have a career that required advanced education. Outside of work, he had a small circle of friends. He was not known for being very social or outgoing. He spent a lot of time at home or with his close friends from the area. In his early 20s, Traini developed an interest in bodybuilding and fitness. He started going to the gym regularly. He cared about his physical appearance. He also became interested in politics during this time. He began to follow political news and discussions online. He read websites and forums that focused on national and immigration issues. In 2017, Traini decided to become more active in politics. He joined a political party called the Lega Nord. This party talked often about controlling immigration. Traini agreed with these ideas. He put his name forward as a candidate for the party in local elections in a town called Cordonia. He did not campaign heavily. When the votes were counted, he received very few. He was not elected. After the election, Traini continued his normal life. He still worked at the factory. He still went to the gym. His political interests became a bigger part of his personal life. He bought books and items related to his political views. He spent more time on the internet reading about these topics. To people who knew him casually, he seemed like a quiet man who kept to himself and his few friends. His life continued in this routine for months. He lived in his family home. He went to work. He came home. His world was small, centered on his town, his job, his gym, and his computer. A few days before February 3rd, 2018, a news story deeply affected people in the Macerata area. An 18-year-old local woman named Pamela Mastropietro was killed. Her body was found in a terrible state. Police arrested a man for her murder, a 29-year-old Nigerian migrant named Innocent Ozgale. This event was talked about constantly on local news and in the town. Luca Traini saw this news. He became very angry. He focused his anger on the man who was arrested. He also began to feel a more general anger towards all immigrants from Africa. He decided he wanted revenge for Pamela Mastropietro's death. Traini owned a black Alfa Romeo 147 car. He also owned a handgun, a Glock 17 pistol. He had a license for this gun. On the morning of Saturday, February 3rd, he got into his car with his gun. He drove from his home in Tolentino to the nearby city of Macerata. His first plan was to go to the city courthouse. He thought he could find and kill Innocent Ozgale there. But he changed his mind. He instead decided to shoot at other African immigrants he saw on the street. It was around 11 o'clock in the morning. Traini began driving slowly through different streets in Macerata. He rolled down his car window. When he saw a person who was black, he pointed his gun out the window and fired. He did this multiple times in different parts of the city. He shot near the railway station. He shot on other busy streets. He also shot at a building that was the local office of a political party, the Democratic Party. He shot 6 men. All of them were immigrants from countries in sub-Saharan Africa. They were between 20 and 32 years old. One man was shot while he was walking down the street. Another was shot while waiting at a bus stop. The bullets hit the men in their legs, hips, and backs. They all fell to the ground, wounded. People on the street heard the gunshots and started screaming and running. They did not know where the shots were coming from at first. After driving and shooting for some time, Traini stopped his car. He parked in front of the city's war memorial. He got out of the car. He had an Italian flag wrapped around his neck like a scarf. He faced the memorial. He raised his right arm straight out in a fascist salute, known as the Roman salute. He shouted the words, "Long live Italy," several times. He did this in full view of other people who were now watching. Police cars arrived at the scene very quickly. The police officers got out of their cars with their weapons drawn. Traiani did not try to fight or run. He put his hands up. The police officers walked over to him, forced him to the ground, and placed him under arrest. They found his Glock 17 pistol in his car. Later, the police searched Traiani's house in Tolentino. Inside, they found items connected to far-right political beliefs. They found a copy of Adolf Hitler's book Mein Kampf. They also found a flag with a special symbol on it called a Celtic cross. These items showed his strong political views. The investigation began immediately after Luca Traiani was arrested at the War Memorial. Since he was caught at the scene and surrendered, the police did not have to search for the shooter. Their work instead focused on collecting evidence and understanding his motives. They took his gun for testing. The test confirmed that the bullets fired at the 6 wounded men came from his Glock 17 pistol. The police also interviewed the victims in the hospital. All 6 injured men described the same thing: a black car driving by, a gun coming out the window, and then being shot. They did not know the shooter. The police gathered security camera footage from the streets where the shootings happened. The footage showed Traiani's car moving slowly, and the gun being fired from the driver's window. This video evidence matched the victims' stories. The legal process moved quickly. Traiani was put in jail while waiting for trial. The prosecutor's office in Macerata studied all the evidence. They decided to charge Traiani with attempted murder. Because there were 6 victims, and because the attacks seemed to target people only for their skin color and origin, the prosecutor added a very serious charge. This charge was massacre with the aggravating factor of racial hatred. They also charged him with illegal carrying of a firearm in a public place, even though he had a license, because he used it to commit crimes. Traiani's trial started later, in 2018. In court, Traiani explained his actions to the judge. He said he was very upset by the murder of Pamela Mastropietro. He said his first idea was to kill the suspect, Innocent Osgale, at the courthouse. He then changed his plan and decided to shoot other African immigrants as an act of revenge. The judge and the court listened to all the testimony from the victims, the police, and experts. The court also looked at the evidence from Traiani's home, like the book Mein Kampf and the flag. This evidence was used to understand his state of mind and to support the racism charge. The court found that the attacks were deliberately aimed at people of color. On October 3, 2018, the judge gave the verdict. Luca Traiani was found guilty on all charges. The sentence was 12 years in prison. The judge said the reason for the long sentence was the racial motive behind the crimes and the danger he created for the whole city. After the trial, the 6 victims recovered from their physical injuries over time. Some needed ongoing medical care. They continued to live in Italy, but the shooting left them with fear and trauma. In 2019, a man named Brenton Tarrant attacked 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. After his arrest, police found he had written names on his weapon magazines. One of the names written was Luca Traiani. When Italian authorities asked Traiani about this, he said he did not know Tarrant and did not support his actions. Traiani also said from prison that he regretted what he had done in Macerata. Luca Traiani began serving his 12-year sentence in an Italian prison. The story of his shooting spree became a known case in discussions about racism, immigration, and political violence in Italy. The 6 men he shot survived and tried to rebuild their lives after the attack. Luca Traiani remained in prison, serving his sentence for the crimes he committed on that February morning. Story 7. Raoul Thomas Moat was born in June 1973 in Newcastle upon Tyne, England. His mother had a serious mental health condition known as bipolar disorder. Because of her illness, she spent long periods of time in psychiatric hospitals. Raoul and his half-brother, Angus, were therefore raised primarily by their grandmother. Their childhood was not stable, as their mother was often absent. As a young man, Moat worked several different physical jobs. He trained as a panel beater, which is a person who repairs the bodies of cars. He also worked as a nightclub doorman, often called a bouncer. Later, he worked as a tree surgeon cutting and maintaining trees. He was very large and strong. He had previously been a bodybuilder. He was 6 feet 3 inches tall and weighed about 17 stone, 238 pounds. People who knew him said he had a bad temper and could explode with anger easily. In his personal life, Moat had children from 2 relationships. He had 2 children with a previous partner. Later, he had a young daughter with a woman named Samantha Staubert, who was his girlfriend for a time. By 2010, Samantha was 22 years old, and she and Moat were no longer together. Moat found this separation very difficult. Moat had many contacts with the police over the years. He had been arrested 12 times. However, these arrests only led to a court conviction on one occasion. This single conviction was for a common assault, which is a minor physical attack. He served a short prison sentence for this crime. In early 2010, Moat was sent to prison again. He was convicted for assaulting a 9-year-old child who was a relative. He was sentenced to 18 weeks in Durham prison. During his time in prison, his life outside was falling apart. His business had collapsed. Moat blamed the police for his business failing. He felt that because of them, he had lost his home, his freedom, and his family. While he was in prison, his ex-girlfriend Samantha Staubert was scared of him. To make Moat leave her alone, she told him a lie. She said her new boyfriend was a police officer. She believed this would stop Moat from bothering her when he was released. This lie made Moat very angry at the police. He began to believe the police had taken his girlfriend and his daughter from him, along with everything else. Moat was released from Durham prison on the 1st of July, 2010. He was angry and felt he had nothing left to lose. After his release from prison on July 1st, Raoul Moat obtained a sawn-off shotgun. He then began looking for his ex-girlfriend, Samantha Staubert. In the early hours of July 3rd, he found out she was at a house in the town of Bertley with her new partner, Chris Brown. Moat went to that house. He crouched underneath the living room window for over an hour, listening to the people inside. He believed he could hear Samantha and Chris laughing at him and mocking him. This made his anger much worse. At 2:40 in the morning, Chris Brown left the house. Moat was waiting outside. He shot Chris Brown at very close range with the shotgun. Chris Brown died immediately from his injuries. Moat then walked to the living room window and fired the gun through the glass. Samantha Staubert was inside the room. She was hit by the shotgun pellets in her arm and her stomach. Her mother was on the phone with the police emergency line when the shooting happened. Samantha was taken to a hospital for urgent surgery on her liver. She survived but was seriously injured. Moat then fled the area. He believed Chris Brown was a police officer because of Samantha's earlier lie. This made Moat focus his anger on the police force. Just after midnight on July 4th, he telephoned the police. He told them he was going to shoot an officer. 12 minutes later, he saw a police car parked on a road near East Denton. A police officer named David Rathband was sitting alone in the car. Moat approached the vehicle and fired his shotgun through the driver's window. The pellets hit PC Rathband in his face and upper body. He was blinded and very badly wounded. Moat called the police again about 50 minutes later. He showed no regret for the shooting and said he would not stop targeting police. The police now began a very large operation to find Moat. It became one of the biggest manhunts in British history. Over 100 armed police officers from different parts of the country were called to the region to search for him. The police told the public that Moat was dangerous and should not be approached. They also spoke to the media, asking them to pass a message to Moat from Samantha Staubert, urging him to stop for the sake of their daughter. Moat did not stop. He sent a long 49-page letter to a friend, who gave it to the police. In the letter, he repeated that the police had destroyed his life. He wrote, "The public need not fear me, but the police should, as I won't stop till I'm dead." He also made threats on social media, listing people he was angry with. The police discovered he had robbed a fish and chip shop in Seton de Laval on the evening of July 5th to get food. The search focused on the countryside around the village of Rothbury after Moat's abandoned car was found there. Police set up large search zones. They used helicopters and even a military aircraft with heat sensors to try to find him in the woods and fields. Schools in the area kept children inside because they were afraid Moat was nearby. Police found a tent Moat had used in some woods. Inside was a dictaphone with a long recording of him talking. On the recording, he said he was reading newspaper reports about himself and was angry about what was written. He threatened to harm a member of the public for every news report he thought was wrong. On the evening of July 9th, the large police search in Rothbury narrowed to one area near the River Coquette. Police officers surrounded a rainwater culvert, which is a large drain pipe under the ground. Raoul Moat was inside this culvert. He was holding his sawn-off shotgun. Police negotiators began talking to him, trying to persuade him to surrender peacefully. They brought food and water to the edge of the culvert. They also brought his best friend to the scene to talk to him. The friend tried to convince Moat to give himself up. For several hours, the police continued to negotiate. In the early hours of July 10th, the situation ended. Moat put the shotgun to his own head and fired. Police officers who had been hiding nearby fired 2 taser devices at him in an attempt to stop him. A taser is a weapon that fires electric probes to disable a person. However, the tasers were either too late or did not work. Moat had already shot himself. Armed officers then rushed into the culvert. Moat was taken by ambulance to a hospital in Newcastle. He was pronounced dead at 2:20 a.m. An official investigation was conducted by the Independent Police Complaints Commission, IPCC. An inquest, which is a legal inquiry into a death, was also held. In September 2011, an inquest jury returned a verdict of suicide. They decided Moat had killed himself. The IPCC investigation cleared the police of any wrongdoing in their final actions. They confirmed no police officer had fired a gun at Moat, only the tasers. It was also found that the type of taser used was not officially approved, leading to the suspension of the company that supplied them. During and after the manhunt, police arrested several people suspected of helping Moat. 2 men, Carl Ness and Kira Mawan, were charged with serious crimes. The police investigation showed that Ness had been with Moat when he shot Samantha Staubert and Chris Brown. Both Ness and Awan were with Moat when he shot PC David Rathband. They were accused of supplying the shotgun and helping Moat look for police officers to target. At their trial, Carl Ness was found guilty of murder, conspiracy to murder, and attempted murder. He was given a life sentence and must serve at least 40 years in prison. Kira Mawan was found guilty of conspiracy to murder and attempted murder. He was also given a life sentence and must serve at least 20 years in prison. PC David Rathband survived the shooting, but was permanently blinded. He struggled with his injuries, and his life changed completely. He started a charity to help other emergency service personnel who were hurt while working. In February 2012, 18 months after being shot, David Rathband died by suicide at his home. The entire series of events left deep scars on the families of the victims, the police force, and the communities involved. Story 8. Manharan Monis was born in Iran in 1964. He lived in the city of Borodjerd. As a young man, he started a business. This business bought tires from the Iranian government at a low price. He then sold these tires on the black market for a higher price. He also started a charity. He used this charity to avoid paying taxes. This was his first known dishonest behavior. He published a book of poetry in 1996. The book did not sell many copies. This failure made him very unhappy. Around this time, he also owned a travel agency. He later left Iran after taking a large amount of money from his travel agency customers. This money was never returned. Monis arrived in Australia in 1996. He came using a 1-month business visa. When that visa expired, he asked to stay as a refugee. He said he needed protection from the Iranian government. He claimed he had been part of Iranian intelligence and was now in danger. He said his wife and children in Iran had been arrested because of his political views. Australia granted him a protection visa in 2001. He became an Australian citizen in 2004. In Australia, Monis changed his name several times. First, he changed his name to Michael Hassan Mavros. During this time, he lived a more secular life. Later, he changed his name again to Manharan Monis. He often told people to call him Sheikh Haran, which is a religious title. He did not have a steady job. Instead, he started a spiritual healing business. He advertised himself as an expert in astrology, numerology, and magic. He operated this business from different places in Sydney. He presented himself as a knowledgeable and powerful figure who could solve people's problems. Monis got married in Australia in 2003. He married a woman who was originally a client of his spiritual healing business. They had a child together. The marriage was not happy. His wife later said he was very controlling. He told her how to dress and what she could not do, like singing or dancing. He said these rules were for Islam. They separated in later years. He had a relationship with another woman named Amira Droudies after his marriage ended. Her family found his behavior strange. He was very secretive. He never allowed his photo to be taken, even at family events. He seemed to have money sometimes, but was vague about how he got it. His girlfriend's family was so concerned about him that they called a national security hotline. They were told he was not considered a threat. Monis liked to get attention. In the year 2000, he chained himself to a pole outside the New South Wales Parliament House. He did this to bring attention to his refugee application. He often contacted newspapers and television stations with his complaints. He frequently stood outside a television studio in Sydney, protesting their news coverage while wearing religious clothes. His behavior caused concern among some people who met him. A social worker who met with him and his former wife said Monis always had to be the hero in his own stories. He seemed to believe he was very important. Lawyers who later dealt with him found him exhausting to talk to. He was obsessed with his own legal cases and believed intelligence agencies were plotting against him. A psychiatrist assessed Monis in 2010. The psychiatrist said he showed signs of a serious mental illness called schizophrenia. The report said he was paranoid. He believed government agencies were following him. He refused to get medicine for his mental health through normal channels because he did not want authorities to know about it. During these years, Monis also began sending letters. He wrote these letters to the families of Australian soldiers who had been killed in war. The letters contained offensive language about the dead soldiers. He said he was doing this as a protest for peace. This led to legal charges against him for using the postal service to harass people. This was his life in Australia up until the years just before 2014. He lived in a small apartment, ran his spiritual healing business, and was involved in constant legal disputes. He moved between different identities, from a secular man to a self-proclaimed sheikh, and was seen by many as a strange and difficult person. In early 2014, Manharan Monis was facing serious legal charges. He was already on bail for being an accessory to the murder of his ex-wife. Around the same time, more criminal actions from his past came to light through police investigations. The first set of crimes involved his spiritual healing business. For several years, women had come to Monis for help with personal problems. He would tell them he could perform spiritual healing. His method was to ask them to undress for a cleansing ritual. He then told them that for the healing to work, he must touch their breasts and genitals. He said if they refused, a curse would fall on them or their families. The women, who were vulnerable and seeking help, felt pressured and afraid. Many complied. In March 2014, based on one woman's report, Monis was arrested and charged with sexual assault. By October 2014, 6 more women had come forward. In total, he was charged with over 40 sexual and indecent assault offenses against 7 women. The second crime was his role in the death of his ex-wife. In April 2013, his ex-wife was found dead in a stairwell. She had been stabbed many times and set on fire. Police investigated and charged Monis' girlfriend, Amira Draudies, with murder. Later, in November 2013, police also charged Monis. They said he was an accessory before and after the fact. This meant they believed he helped plan the murder and helped afterwards to cover it up. A magistrate granted both Monis and Draudies bail in December 2013. The magistrate said the case against them had significant weaknesses at that time. While on bail for these serious charges, Monis' behavior changed. He began to adopt more extreme religious views. He had always called himself a Shia Muslim cleric, but in late 2014, he announced he had converted to Sunni Islam. He started attending rallies held by radical Islamic groups. He also wrote a letter to the government asking about the legality of contacting the terrorist group Islamic State. On his website, he posted a pledge of loyalty to the leader of Islamic State. On the morning of December 15, 2014, Monis walked into the Lindt Chocolate Cafe in Martin Place, Sydney. He was carrying a bag. Inside the bag was a sawn-off shotgun. He took control of the cafe, which had 10 employees and 8 customers inside. He made everyone move to the back of the store. He told them he was a sheikh and that this was a terrorist attack. He forced some hostages to hold a black flag with Arabic writing against the cafe window so people outside could see. Monis made demands. He wanted an Islamic State flag to be delivered to him. He also demanded to speak live on radio with the Prime Minister of Australia. Police negotiators began talking to him through phones inside the cafe. As hours passed, Monis let some hostages call family members and TV stations to repeat his demands. He became more agitated when his demands were not met. He forced the cafe manager, Tori Johnson, to act as a human shield at the door. During the afternoon and evening, 5 hostages managed to escape by running out when Monis was distracted. This made Monis angrier. He became more violent towards the remaining hostages. In the early hours of December 16th, after 16 hours, he forced Tori Johnson to kneel on the floor. He then shot him in the head with the shotgun, killing him. The sound of the gunshot caused other hostages to run for the exit. Police tactical officers who were positioned outside saw the hostages running and heard the gunshot. They immediately stormed the cafe using explosives to break in. There was a short gunfight. Monis fired at police, and police fired back. Monis was killed. During this exchange, a police bullet or a fragment from a police bullet hit a hostage, Katrina Dawson. She also died from her injuries. Several other hostages were injured by police shotgun pellets or broken glass. The siege was over. Monis had committed his final, violent crime while still on bail for the murder accessory charges and the many sexual assault charges. The crime was discovered as it was happening. People outside the Lindt Cafe saw hostages holding a black flag against the window. Someone called the police. Police arrived within minutes and surrounded the area. They evacuated nearby buildings and closed the train station underneath. Because the event unfolded over 16 hours, the police had time to set up a command post and call in negotiators and tactical officers. The entire siege was watched by the police in real time. The deaths of Tory Johnson and Katrina Dawson were confirmed by police after they entered the cafe at the end of the siege. After the siege ended, a major investigation began. The first goal was to understand everything about Haron Monis. Police searched his home and the home of his girlfriend, Amira Droughties. They took computers and papers. They wanted to know how he planned the siege and if he had help. The investigation found he had acted alone. He had no direct contact with any terrorist group like Islamic State. His pledges to the group were made online by himself. A key part of the investigation was the shotgun. Police traced the weapon. They found it was an old, legally owned shotgun that had been reported stolen in 2001. Monis had sawed off the barrel and the stock to make it easier to hide. There was no record of Monis ever having a gun license. He had acquired the gun illegally. The investigation also looked at why Monis was free to commit the siege. He was on bail for serious violent charges. A government review was held to examine this. The review found many failures in the system. The state prosecutors did not strongly argue against his bail for the accessory to murder charge. The federal system that granted him refugee status and citizenship did not properly check his background in Iran. Different police and security agencies had pieces of information about Monis, but they never shared them to form a complete picture. The review concluded that if the systems had worked better, Monis might have been in jail and not able to take hostages. A formal inquest was held by the New South Wales coroner. The inquest looked at the police actions during the siege. It questioned whether police should have stormed the cafe earlier to save lives. Experts testified that police procedures at the time said to wait during a siege unless lives were in immediate danger. The coroner found that the police decision to wait was reasonable based on what they knew at the time. However, the inquest also found that the police command structure was confused and communication was poor. The coroner recommended major changes to police siege protocols and training. In the courts, justice proceeded for Monis' other crimes. Since Monis was dead, he could not be tried, but his girlfriend, Amira Droughties, stood trial for the murder of Monis' ex-wife. In a judge-only trial in 2016, she was found guilty of murder. The judge said she had stabbed the woman 18 times and set her body on fire because Monis had influenced her. She was sentenced to 44 years in prison with a minimum of 33 years before she can apply for parole. For the victims of the sexual assaults, there was no trial because the accused was dead. However, their stories were officially recorded as part of the police investigations and the inquest, validating their experiences. The victims of the siege and their families received compensation from the government. A permanent memorial was built in Martin Place to honor Tory Johnson and Katrina Dawson. The Lint Cafe reopened at a different location in Martin Place. The government made changes based on the reviews. Bail laws were tightened to make it harder for people charged with serious violent offenses to get bail. A new national database for criminal intelligence was improved so that police and security agencies could share information more easily. Police also revised their training and procedures for handling sieges. Monis' body was not claimed by any family or community group. The New South Wales government eventually buried his body in a secret location at public expense. The story of the Lint Cafe siege ended with these actions. The criminal accomplice was imprisoned, the systems that failed were reformed, and the victims were remembered, while the perpetrator was buried anonymously. The siege left a permanent mark on the city, leading to stricter laws and a renewed focus on the safety of the public. Story 9. Graham Young was born in September 1947 in Neasden, a suburb of London, England. His mother died from an illness when he was only a few months old. After her death, Graham and his older sister were sent to live with different relatives. Graham went to live with an aunt and uncle. A few years later, his father married a new woman named Molly. The family was reunited, and Graham and his sister went to live with their father and new stepmother in the London area. Graham attended a local boys' school. He was a quiet boy who did not have many friends. He preferred to spend his time alone reading. From a very young age, Graham developed a strong interest in chemistry. However, his interest was not normal. He became specifically fascinated by poisons. He read many books about toxic substances and their effects on the human body. He also read books about history, but he was mainly interested in books about Nazi Germany and dark subjects. He used his pocket money to buy chemistry sets and equipment. He began to conduct small experiments in his bedroom. As he got older, he wanted to work with more dangerous chemicals. In early 1961, when he was 13 years old, he went to a pharmacy. He convinced the chemist there to sell him a small amount of antimony, a poisonous metal. He did this by using a false name and acting like he was older and knew what he was doing. Graham started to use the poisons he learned about on the people around him. He began with his own family. First, his stepmother Molly became very sick. She suffered from severe stomach pains, vomiting, and diarrhea. She thought it was a stomach bug. Then, his father became ill with the same symptoms. Next, his sister fell sick on 2 occasions. Later, even Graham himself became ill, and so did 2 of his school friends. In November 1961, Graham's sister had a very bad reaction after drinking a small amount of tea Graham had given her. She had to go to the hospital. Doctors thought she had been exposed to a poisonous plant. Graham's father searched his room, but found nothing. He warned Graham to be more careful with his chemicals. In April 1962, Graham's stepmother, Molly, died. The doctor said she died from problems related to a past injury. No one suspected poison at the time. After her death, Graham poisoned a relative during a family gathering by putting antimony in a jar of pickles. Soon after, his father became so ill he was hospitalized. Doctors at the hospital told his father he had antimony poisoning and that another dose could kill him. Graham's aunt became suspicious because she knew about his interest in poisons. At school, a science teacher also became suspicious. The teacher found bottles of poison in Graham's desk. The teacher and the headmaster arranged for Graham to talk to a man who was actually a psychiatrist. Graham talked freely about his detailed knowledge of poisons. The psychiatrist was alarmed and contacted the police. Graham Young was released from Broadmoor Hospital in February 1971. He went to live with his sister and her husband in the town of Hemel Hempstead. He was given a new identity to help him start a new life. A short time after his release, he wanted to get more poisons. He went to a pharmacy in London and tried to buy a poison called antimony tartrate. The chemist refused to sell it to him without official permission. Young then came back with a fake letter on stolen university notepaper, pretending to be a student needing the chemical for an experiment. The chemist believed the letter and sold him the poison. Later, Young used the same trick to buy another poison called thallium. Soon after, Young attended a job training course in a town called Slough. He stayed in a hostel there. He became friends with another man living at the hostel named Trevor Sparks. One evening in February 1971, Young gave Sparks a glass of water. Later that night, Sparks became violently ill with stomach problems and pains in his legs. He was sick on and off for the next 2 months. Doctors could not find the cause. Sparks eventually moved away from Slough, and his health slowly improved. Young had put antimony in his water. In May 1971, Young got a job as a storekeeper at a company called John Hadland Laboratories in Bovingdon. The company made scientific equipment. On his job application, Young lied about his past. He said he had not worked for years because he had a nervous breakdown after his mother died in a car accident. His employers received letters from his doctors at Broadmoor, but the letters did not say he was a convicted poisoner. They only said he was being rehabilitated. He was given the job. Young moved into a rented room in Hemel Hempstead. At work, his colleagues found him strange. He was often quiet and kept to himself. During breaks, he read books about war, chemistry, or Nazis. Part of his job was to collect the office tea trolley and bring cups of tea or coffee to the men working in the storeroom. Each worker had his own personal mug. Very soon after Young started working there, people began to get sick. The first was his boss, a man named Bob Eggle. In June 1971, Eggle got severe stomach cramps and diarrhea. He took time off work. He felt better after a holiday, but when he returned, Young put a large dose of thallium in his tea. Bob Eggle's health collapsed quickly. He was taken to the hospital with intense pain, numbness, and then paralysis. He died in July. Doctors thought he died from a rare nerve disease. Another worker, Ron Hewitt, also got sick from his tea but left the company soon after. His symptoms stopped. A woman named Diana Smart, who worked nearby, occasionally annoyed Young. When she did, he would put small amounts of antimony in her tea, causing her to feel sick and go home. He wrote about doing this in a private diary. In October 1971, Young began poisoning two other co-workers, David Tilson and Jethro Batt. He put thallium in their drinks. Both men became extremely ill. They were admitted to the hospital. Their hair fell out, their skin hurt, and they had terrible nerve pain. Both men survived, but the poisoning caused them permanent health damage. Young's main target became a man named Fred Biggs. Biggs was a part-time worker and a local counselor. Young first gave him antimony, making him sick with what everyone at the factory called the Bovingdon bug. Then, at the end of October, Young put 3 doses of thallium into Biggs's tea over 2 days. Fred Biggs became very ill, with chest pains and trouble walking. He was moved between several hospitals. His nervous system shut down. He lost the ability to speak, had trouble breathing, and his skin peeled. He died in November. During this time, the management at Hadland Laboratories was very worried. Many of their employees were sick, and one was dead. They started their own investigation. Some workers had become suspicious of Young. They noticed he was never ill. One worker told the bosses about Young's strange interest in poisons. The company doctor said he had ruled out poisoning as a cause, which led to a technical argument with Young, who insisted the symptoms matched thallium poisoning. The doctor was shocked by Young's deep knowledge of the subject. The owner of the company was informed and contacted the police. After the owner of Hadland Laboratories contacted the police, officers began their investigation. They quickly learned that the series of illnesses at the factory had started soon after Graham Young began working there. A routine background check on Young revealed his true identity and his previous conviction for poisoning his family. This information changed the case completely. On November 20th, 1971, the police arrested Young at the home of his aunt and uncle in Sheerness. When they searched the room he rented in Hemel Hempstead, they found a large collection of poisons. These included significant amounts of thallium and antimony. They also found other dangerous substances like digitalis and aconitine. In his room, there were many Nazi flags, pictures, and symbols. Most importantly, the police found a detailed diary. In this diary, Young had written notes about his coworkers using their initials. He recorded what poison he gave them, the dosage, their symptoms, and whether he intended for them to live or die. When questioned by police, Young first denied doing anything wrong. However, the evidence from his diary and the poisons in his room was very strong. He later confessed to poisoning Bob Eggle, Fred Biggs, David Tilson, Jethro Batt, and Trevor Sparks. He explained that he used different poisons to confuse doctors. He also told the police that he had murdered his stepmother years earlier. He spoke in great detail about the effects of thallium on the human body. When asked why he did it, he said he had stopped seeing his victims as people and saw them more as experiments. Young was charged with 2 murders, 2 attempted murders, and several counts of administering poison. His trial began at St. Albans Crown Court in June 1972. Because of legal rules, the jury was not allowed to know about his previous poisoning convictions from when he was a teenager. This meant the trial had to focus only on the new evidence. The prosecution presented many witnesses, including the doctors who treated the victims and Young's co-workers. The diary was used as key evidence. Young changed his story during the trial. He said his confession to the police was false, and he only gave it because he was tired. He claimed the diary was not a real record of crimes, but just notes for a fictional novel he wanted to write. Scientific evidence was very important. Fred Biggs's body was examined and found to contain thallium. Bob Eggle's body had been cremated, but his ashes were still kept in an urn. Scientists tested the ashes and found they contained thallium. This was the first time cremated ashes were used as evidence in a British murder trial. The jury did not believe Young's story about the diary being fiction. They found him guilty of murdering Bob Eggle and Fred Biggs. He was also found guilty of attempting to murder David Tilson and Jethro Batt, and of poisoning Diana Smart and Ron Hewitt. He was found not guilty on some of the lesser charges. Young asked the judge to send him to a normal prison instead of a psychiatric hospital like Broadmoor. The judge agreed. Young was given a life sentence and sent to Parkhurst Prison. Later, he was moved to Ashworth Hospital, a secure psychiatric hospital. While there, he became friends with another notorious criminal, Ian Brady. Young died in his prison cell in August 1990 from a heart attack. He was 42 years old. The case had a major impact on British law. After the trial, the government changed the rules for releasing patients from secure psychiatric hospitals. New safeguards required 2 separate psychiatrists to agree before a dangerous patient could be released. Supervision of released patients was made stricter. The government also reviewed the entire system for handling mentally ill offenders, which led to the creation of more secure hospital units across the country. Furthermore, the laws about buying poisons were tightened to prevent people from easily obtaining them, resulting in the Poisons Act of 1972. The story of Graham Young also led to some copycat crimes and fears in other countries, showing the dangerous influence of his actions. Graham Young spent the rest of his life in prison, and the laws of the land were changed to try and prevent anyone like him from doing the same thing again.